Hello, welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I am Matthew Lucas.
And I am Stephen Ryan.
You are indeed, and we post every week. So do hit subscribe if you want to know about our continuing horticultural adventures.
Yes, and why not indeed?
Now, I can hear the babbling of a brook, Stephen. Are we by your half-empty pond for a reason?
Yes, but it's not about the pond. Yes, we still haven't had the pond fixed. We're still waiting for somebody to come out and have a look. At the moment, I've got a pump in there just recycling the water a bit so that it doesn't go all manky and smelly and disgusting.
Yeah.
And so that's that gurgly noise you can hear in the background. But we're here for a plant, and we don't have to go far this time.
Aha!
There it is.
But not physically far, geographically though?
Oh, geographically, we're going to South Africa.
Well, let's go.
All right.
This is a very striking plant by your babbling pond, Stephen.
It certainly is, and it's one of my favourite textural plants in the garden. Everybody comments on it, everybody wants to know what it is.
Yes.
And so we thought we'd share it with everybody else.
Tell the good people its name.
All right, this is Elegia capensis.
Elegia capensis.
Yes.
I have no clues what that might mean.
Yeah, well, capensis, of course, is of the Cape. So from the southern part of Africa. So capensis.
Okay.
So if you see capensis in anything, there's a very good chance it comes from that southern part of Africa.
Okay, good
now,
to know.
Elegia is slightly weird in that it is a Latinization of elegy, which is a type of poem. It's a sort of a sad elegy poem thingy. Now, the reason would seem to be that when this is growing in the fine boss, in its natural habitat, the wind blows through the stems and you get this whispering sound.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That, as they say in the trade, is a long bow.
So anyway. Elegia. So that's where Elegia comes from. It's a genus of about 50 species.
Now, the first thing that strikes me looking at it is it looks like an ancient plant. And are they called horsetails?
Yes, they are called horsetails, and no, this isn't one.
Oh.
And nor is it that ancient. It's actually a much
wrong.
Yeah, much more modern plant. So it has the look that you get with the horsetail.
Yes.
But of course, horsetails in Australia particularly are considered noxious weeds. We're not allowed to grow them. We can get fined for having them. They are a definite no-no because once they get into some boggy soil, they run like there's no tomorrow, and they're really, really hard to get rid of. So we're not allowed to grow horsetails in Australia. This can give us the same look, but has none of the bad side.
Oh, well, let's go through its T's and C's one by one. So firstly, its natural habitat, where does it grow? What's it going to look like when we come across it? Where is it?
All right. Well, it's in the very well-known floral area of Southern Cape area of South Africa in a vegetative type called the fynbos, or fine boss.
Meaning good wood.
Yeah, well, good bush. Good
boss.
Yeah. So the fine boss is made up of lots of plants in this family, the Restio family, plus ericas, proteas, shrubby stuff. There's no tall trees in the fynbos. It's all low plants, perennials, bulbs,
is that because
shrubby
of the soil?
things. Yes, they have very poor sandy soils, so that's partially the issue. But they also burn through regularly.
Interesting. Not unlike much of Australia.
Yeah, well, we have the same issue, and we also have plants that have developed the same sort of skills to survive that sort of thing.
Okay, so let's get to that in a minute. But the first thing, obviously, we can hear the babbling brook and you're next to water. So is this a marginal plant in terms of its need to be near running water or bodies of water?
Well, it doesn't need to be near running water, but it does like moisture. If I were growing it in a garden, it would be a very good marginal plant on the side of a pond or dam, something like that.
Yeah.
And in fact, quite useful in Australia, where our ponds and dams often disappear a bit in the summer, because this grows in sort of temporary seeps in its natural habitat. So it can cope with a little bit of drying out in the summer, which is a good thing, seeing as my pond's leaking at the moment and it's not actually got its roots down in the water at the moment. But it can go into very wet, soggy conditions through the winter months.
Because when we did a program about Gunnera, which I live for, and you mentioned that issue in Australia, is that the water level rises and falls in Australian dams, and Gunnera likes consistency.
Yeah, whereas this can cope with going a bit way the other, either way. So it's probably a really good plant for people to grow in those sort of habitats in our sort of climate.
Yeah.
It's not what I would call really cold hardy. They're very borderline in Europe. Could probably grow them in the south of England, around Cornwall, those sort of areas reasonably well.
So it's not going to deal with frost?
Not heavy frost, no. Down to just below 0 Celsius, it will
32
sort of
Fahrenheit.
so sort of manage.
So looking at its habit, it looks very bamboo-y. It looks like a clumping bamboo. I
Yep.
mean, is that how it grows? It's rhizomous and
Yep, it has rhizomes, but it doesn't run like a running bamboo would.
Good
it
to know.
just makes a slowly increasing clump.
But easy to manage.
Very easy to manage. So it's a plant that anybody could grow in a comparatively small garden. Gives wonderful vertical sort of accents in a garden.
It does.
It can be pot grown, although having said that, it's not a plant that likes to be disturbed. So once it's planted, it's best left alone. You can do all sorts of damage if you try and dig it up, and there is where the commercial problems come in with this plant.
I think we were circling around this,
Yeah.
Stephen, seeing as you know, the wheel of commerce must turn.
Yes.
How do you propagate it then? Do
right.
you propagate this for your nursery?
I do grow it for my nursery. I grow it from divisions, but I keep some plants in pots that
Just
I can
for that purpose?
just for that purpose, and then I can cut them with a bread knife or some sort of sharp serrated knife, or maybe a hacksaw.
I
or
can
something.
see that picture.
Yeah.
A little butter, a little jam, a
Yeah,
little
no,
slice
no,
of
no, I'm not
this.
going that. But what I then get is a piece of comparatively undisturbed root system. If I try and dig it up out of the ground, you disturb the roots
It's
all the way
that
around.
sensitive.
Oh yes, yes, and you do it only in the late winter, early spring. So in the southern hemisphere, I do mine around about August, early September, just when it's about to start initiating new growth, and that's how I would propagate my Elegias. You can grow them from seed, but you need boy and girl, and I've only got one sex. So I'm sorry, I can't get viable seed off mine. If I bought seed in from overseas, which up until recently was possible, I'm not sure that they're still on the allowed list, then I would end up with boys and girls, and then it could self-seed. But there is another thing. Because it grows in areas where there's fire, the seed normally doesn't germinate until it's been burnt over.
So this is such an interesting evolutionary adaptation, which a lot of Australian plants have. A lot of Australian plants actually need the heat to force the pod open to catapult the seed, and I guess the logic being that you then have all this nutritious potash.
Yeah, exactly, that they can germinate in. But it's actually somewhat more complicated than just the heat. I mean, the heat will open seed pods, but a lot of these plants have evolved where they actually need the chemicals of smoke to actually start initiating the germination.
Oh my goodness.
And you can buy liquid smoke. It's sort of water that's been infused with smoke.
And it has the chemicals in
And
it.
it has the chemicals in
Oh my
it.
goodness.
So you can soak your Elegia seed in liquid smoke, and that helps to germinate it.
Stephen, that
It's
is
true.
obsessive. That's
Yep.
nonsense.
No, it's true, and it works. I mean, if you just sow the seed, you might get the odd one that will pop up over a period of time.
But if you sprinkle them with liquid smoke,
Yeah,
Oh,
or
for
soak them in
goodness
it,
sake.
then they'll
like holy
germinate
water.
really well. That is like holy water. So there's very little weedy potential with these plants, particularly if you're doing what I'm doing and only growing the one sex. I mean, it can't produce seed, immaterial whether it's a boy or a girl one, that's viable, and it only clumps. So there's no real weed potential from that. If, on the other hand, though, I did in fact raise them from seed, make sure I have a boy and a girl in the garden, and then have a bushfire, it could take off. So that's how safe I think it is.
and you know,
really.
bushfires are relatively common here, so let's not go there.
Yeah.
Now tell me the common name again.
Well, they call them thatching rushes as a group.
So,
They did,
obvious question,
Yeah.
can you thatch with it?
yeah, well, I'm not sure whether this one was specifically used for thatching, but many of the restios were, and in fact, restio comes from the word for rope, because they used to make baskets, ropes, thatching, all that sort of thing out of these plants. And so they were used in their native habitat as a thatching material. But as I said, I'm not sure that this specific one was the creme de la creme of thatching material. It may have been. But I like it as a garden plant and have absolutely no intention of using it for thatching.
And it is tall, because we're a bit elevated above it. I mean, it's probably at least 2 meters tall, so over 7 feet.
Yeah, so it can grow into quite a big plant because we've had a cool season this year. Some of its stems are actually even taller than I normally get them, so it came up really tall. And it's a fantastic foliage plant.
It's stunning. So another obvious question then is, does each stem last 12 months? Is it that kind of annual cycle of growth?
You have stems dying each year, but they may be 2 or 3 years old before they start to do that.
Okay.
But you need to go in and clean out the plant, which I haven't done this year yet, so we might get the secateurs and show you where to cut in a second.
Yes.
But I'd just like to mention in passing that This beautiful foliage is actually very good for picking to use for floral art.
Oh yeah.
And in South Africa they send great quantities of it to the cut flower markets of Holland. And so it's actually a cash crop for that very reason. It lasts very well in water. You can get weeks and weeks out of it as a cut foliage to show off your flowers with.
Well, and it's very, you know, it's kind of very brutal modern. So rather than being soft and floral, it's very structural and sculptural. So I imagine it would look great. Wow. Well, I think we should do a little maintenance.
All right,
Stephen
I will
Ryan.
go and get my secateurs and I'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
About once a year, I should go through this plant and remove the dead canes. I have to say, I've let it go a wee bit long, but there you go, what can I say? So, you can see here, we've got a completely dead one, which might be all right for some dried flower work, maybe, or to go into the compost. So I'll show you where to cut.
That was really interesting. It is so striking. I can see why people are immediately drawn to it because it's in quite a striking position in your garden.
It is. And I mean, it's just texturally so interesting with
Yeah.
these fabulous sort of fluffy, well, they're stems actually, they're not leaves. And then the wonderful coppery coloured bracts that run up the stem as well. Beautiful plant and well worth a spot in any garden that it'll grow in.
If you can propagate it.
Yes, if you can propagate it or buy it or grow it from seed or whatever. So
There you are.
There we go.
Well, we've had quite a geographical wandering. Where could we wander next week, Mr. Ryan?
Well, it could be anywhere knowing us. I mean, really. Probably not Antarctica.
No, although, well, anyway. So if you want to know exactly what next week's geographic wanderings might be, you'll have to hit subscribe and the notification bell. But until then, see you next week.
Bye all.